3 months had passed since the first sabotage. Taeho's small group had grown into something bigger. They now had contacts in 12 different work areas across the mining station. Each person knew only a few others, just like the old Earth files had taught them. Bora sat in the engineering workshop, pretending to repair a drilling machine while actually building something else entirely. She had learned to hide her real work inside normal maintenance tasks. The Valori guards walked past her every day without knowing she was making weapons. "How's it going?" Taeho asked quietly, sitting down beside her with his own fake repair work. "Good," she whispered back. "I figured out how to make their armor weak. These mining chemicals can eat through almost anything if you mix them right." She showed him a small container filled with clear liquid. It looked exactly like the cleaning fluid they used every day, but Bora had changed it somehow. "One splash of this and their white armor starts falling apart," she explained. "But we have to be careful. It's dangerous for humans too." Across the workshop, Dong Hyuk was teaching Yuna how to turn a mining laser into a proper weapon. Dong Hyuk had been an athlete on Earth before the invasion. He was strong and fast, and he learned quickly how to fight with whatever tools they could find. "The trick is changing the focus settings," he was saying. "Instead of cutting rock, it can cut through metal. Even Valori metal." Yuna nodded as she took notes. She was a medic, but she wanted to know how to fight too. All of them did. The anger was spreading through the human workers like fire. Every day brought new people who wanted to join the resistance. Wu Jin burst into the workshop, trying to look casual but clearly excited. "We got a message," he said quietly. "From Station Keth 7. Taeho's heart jumped. Station Keth 7 was on another planet, 3 star systems away. If they had received contact from there, it meant the resistance was spreading beyond their wildest hopes. That night they gathered in their secret meeting place deep in the abandoned tunnels. Su Jin, their newest member, had set up communication equipment that could reach other planets without the Valori knowing about it. The message came through the old Earth emergency channels," Su Jin explained. "Someone named Gite is leading a group on Keth 7. They found the same kind of hidden files we did." "How many people?" Haisu asked. 53 confirmed resistance members, and they're in contact with groups on 4 other planets." The room fell silent. 53 people. That was more than twice their own numbers. And there were other planets too. "What are they doing?" Taeho wanted to know. Su Jin smiled. "Same things we are. Sabotage, weapons building, recruiting. But they've done something bigger. They hit a Valori transport ship last week, stole a whole cargo of weapons and medical supplies. This was incredible news, but also scary. If the resistance was growing this fast, the Valori would notice soon. They needed to be ready for what came next. "We need to coordinate," Taeho decided. "All the groups need to work together. If we're going to fight them, we have to be smart about it." Over the next few weeks, the communication network grew stronger. They made contact with resistance groups on 9 different planets. Each group had found the same hidden files, the same plans for fighting back. Someone from old Earth had prepared for this day very well. The group started sharing information. Bora's chemical weapons formula was sent to other planets. Dong Hyuk's weapon modifications were copied by fighters across the galaxy. Each group contributed something useful. But the real breakthrough came when they made contact with Gite's group on Keth 7. Gite had been a pilot before joining the resistance. He knew about Valori ships and technology. "The White Ones have a weakness," Gite explained during a secret video call. "All their systems are connected. When one ship talks to another ship, they share everything, but they never thought about humans being able to listen in." Su Jin leaned forward, interested. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we can hack their entire fleet if we know the right codes. Every ship, every station, every communication. We can see everything they're planning. This changed everything." The resistance had always been reactive, responding to what the Valori did. Now they could be proactive. They could see attacks coming and prepare for them. The first test of their new capabilities came 2 weeks later. Su Jin intercepted Valori communications, planning a surprise inspection of the mining stations. The inspections were designed to find resistance activity. "They know something is happening," Taeho told his team, "but they don't know what or where." "How long do we have?" Bora asked. 3 days until they arrive at our station." They sent warnings to all the other resistance groups. Everyone had to hide their weapons and equipment. The meeting places were cleaned and abandoned. For 3 days, the resistance would disappear completely. When the Valori inspection team arrived, they found nothing suspicious. The humans worked normally, complained about normal things, and acted like broken people who had given up hope. The inspectors left after 2 days, convinced that Station Keth 9 was secure. But the Resistance was learning more than just how to hide. They were learning how to strike back in ways the Valerie couldn't understand. The first coordinated attack happened on a Tuesday. 6 different resistance groups on 6 different planets sabotaged their mining operations at exactly the same time. Transport vehicles broke down. Drilling equipment failed. Power systems crashed. Communication networks went offline. The Valorii were confused and angry. They couldn't understand how problems could happen on so many planets at once. They looked for connections between the incidents but found nothing. The resistance groups were too well hidden. Production is down 30% across the sector, Wu Jin reported after intercepting more communications. They're panicking. But the humans weren't just hurting Valorii operations. They were also learning to fight properly. Haisu had been training small groups in combat techniques. Dong Hyuk taught weapons handling. Yuna showed people how to treat injuries. The Resistance was becoming an army, but an army unlike anything the Valorii had ever faced. Instead of wearing uniforms and marching in formation, they looked exactly like normal workers. They hid in plain sight and struck without warning. The biggest success came when Gitei's group managed to capture a small Valorii patrol ship. The ship was carrying advanced weapons and communication equipment. More importantly, it contained detailed maps of Valorii military installations. We're not just fighting back anymore, Taeho realized during a leadership meeting with other groups. We're actually winning some battles. But winning brought new problems. The Valorii were starting to take the Resistance seriously. They increased security at all mining stations. They started using different patrol routes. They brought in more guards and better weapons. They're learning too, Hisu warned. We have to stay ahead of them. The Resistance adapted by becoming even more unpredictable. Instead of planned attacks, they started using random strikes that no one could anticipate. A mining laser would suddenly malfunction and cut through support beams. A transport truck would mysteriously drive off a cliff. Communication towers would collapse during storms. Each incident looked like an accident, but together they were devastating to Valorii operations. The White Armies were facing an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't defeat with traditional military tactics. Sujin discovered something important while monitoring Valorii communications. They're calling us shadow terrorists, she reported. They don't understand how we're doing what we're doing. Good, Taeho said. Fear makes them make mistakes, and the Valorii were making mistakes. They started suspecting each other of incompetence. They changed commanders frequently when operations failed. They wasted resources on security measures that didn't work against an invisible enemy. Meanwhile, the Resistance kept growing. New groups formed on planets where there had been no activity before. The communication network expanded to cover dozens of star systems. Weapons and supplies moved secretly between worlds. Most importantly, humans everywhere were remembering what it felt like to hope. For 300 years they had accepted slavery as their fate. Now they were beginning to believe that freedom was possible. We're not shadows hiding from the light anymore, Bora said during one of their meetings. We're shadows that fight back. The old Earth files had predicted this moment. When enough humans joined the Resistance, when enough worlds were involved, the movement would reach a tipping point. The Valorii would be forced to choose between crushing the rebellion with overwhelming force or risking the collapse of their entire slave labor system. Taeho looked around at his team. They had all changed since that first day when 10 innocent people died. They were stronger now, smarter, more dangerous, but they were also more human. The Resistance hadn't just taught them to fight. It had taught them to hope. The White Armies ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology. But they had never faced anything like human determination. And human determination, once awakened, was unstoppable. The shadows were rising, and soon they would cover the stars. The mining drill screamed against the rock as Taeho wiped sweat from his face. The air in the tunnels was always hot and thick. He had been working in these caves for 15 years, ever since the white soldiers brought him here from Earth. That felt like a lifetime ago. Supervisor Taeho, called Wu Jin, running toward him with his communication device blinking red. The young man looked scared. The white ones are coming down. They want to see you now. Taeho's stomach dropped. When the Valorii wanted to see someone, it was never good news. He looked around at the other human workers. They all stopped what they were doing. Everyone knew what a red light meant. Keep working, Taeho told them quietly. All of you. Just keep working. He followed Wu Jin through the narrow tunnels toward the main elevator. The Valori had built this place deep underground on the planet Keth 9. Humans did all the dangerous work while the white aliens stayed safe above ground. The crystals they mined powered Valori ships and weapons. Every day, Taeho watched trucks full of crystals leave the mine and felt sick. The elevator ride up seemed to take forever. Taeho thought about Bora, his partner who worked in the engineering section. They had been together for 3 years now. She was smart, much smarter than the Valori gave her credit for. All humans were. The elevator doors opened to reveal Overseer Zheltai waiting. The Valori stood 8 feet tall with pale white skin that seemed to glow. His white armor was perfect and clean. His black eyes looked at Taeho like he was looking at an insect. Human supervisor, Zheltai said in his cold voice. Your workers have been in restricted areas. No, sir, Taeho replied quickly. My teams only go where they're told to go. Zheltai held up a small device. It showed red dots moving through areas marked as forbidden. This tracker data says otherwise. Your mining team went 2 levels deeper than allowed yesterday. Taeho's mind raced. Yesterday his team had been following a rich crystal vein. The tunnel curved down into an area they had never been before. They found something there. Something the Valori didn't know about. But Taeho couldn't tell Zheltai that. The crystal vein led us there, Taeho said. We were following standard mining procedure. There are no exceptions, Zheltai said. Humans follow orders exactly. When humans break rules, other humans pay the price. The overseer turned and walked toward the main compound. Taeho had no choice but to follow. Outside, hundreds of human workers were being forced to stand in rows. Guards in white armor surrounded them with energy weapons ready. Zheltai stood on a platform so all the humans could see him. His voice carried across the compound through speakers. Humans of mining station Keth 9, he began. Some of you have forgotten your place. Some of you think you can go where you please. This is wrong thinking. Taeho saw Bora in the crowd. Her face was pale with fear. Next to her stood Hisu, an older woman who had been a soldier on Earth before the invasion. Hisu's hands were clenched into fists. To help you remember your place, Zheltai continued, 10 humans will be selected for punishment. This will remind the rest of you to follow orders. The guards began walking through the crowd. They grabbed people at random. An old man who worked in the kitchens. A young woman from the repair crew. A teenage boy who sorted crystals. 10 humans were dragged to the front of the crowd. No, Taeho shouted, running forward. They didn't do anything wrong. It was my team that went into the restricted area. Zheltai looked down at him. Yes, it was your team. So you get to watch what happens when humans disobey. The guards raised their weapons. The 10 humans stood together holding hands. Some were crying. Others looked angry. All of them were brave. Taeho closed his eyes, but he still heard the sound of the energy weapons firing. When he opened them again, 10 bodies lay on the ground. The rest of the humans stood in shocked silence. Remember this moment, Zheltai said. Remember that human actions have consequences. Return to work. The crowd began to break up slowly. Taeho felt like he couldn't breathe. These people had died because of what his team found. Because he hadn't been careful enough, Bora appeared beside him. She took his hand without saying anything. Hisu joined them, her face dark with anger. We can't let this happen again, Hisu whispered. There has to be something we can do. That night, after the guards finished their rounds, Taeho met with his mining team in a storage room. Bora, Wu Jin, and Hisu were there too. They spoke in whispers. Show them what we found, Bora said. Taeho pulled out a small metal object they had discovered in the restricted tunnel. It was clearly human-made with symbols from Earth. Bora had been working on it for hours. It's some kind of storage device, she explained quietly. Very old from before the invasion. I think I can access the data inside. She connected the device to her portable computer. After a few minutes, text appeared on the screen. Earth military codes, weapon designs, training manuals for something called guerrilla warfare. What's guerrilla warfare? Wu Jin asked. Hyesu smiled for the first time since the executions. It's how small groups fight big armies. It's how weak forces beat strong ones. The humans who hid this knew we might need it someday. They spent the next hour reading through the files. The information was incredible. Plans for making weapons from mining equipment, ways to disrupt enemy communications, methods for hiding in plain sight while fighting back. We can't do this alone, Taeho said finally. We need more people. I can help with that, Woojin offered. I monitor all the communication channels. I know workers on other levels, other shifts. Some of them are angry too. And I know the old Earth military protocols, Hisu added. I can train people to fight properly. Bora was still reading through the files. There's something else here, she said. Communication codes. Ways to send secret messages between different mining stations. This was designed to connect resistance groups across multiple planets. Taeho felt something changing inside him. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Hope and anger. The Valori had taken everything from humanity. Their planet, their freedom, their dignity. Today they had taken 10 more lives just to make a point. We start small, he decided. Just our team at first. We learn everything in these files. We practice in secret, and when we're ready, we find others who feel the same way. Over the next few weeks, they met every night after the guard's final check. Bora decoded more files from the device. Haisu taught them basic combat techniques using mining tools. Woojin figured out how to send coded messages through the work communication system. They learned that the restricted area had been sealed because the Valori found human artifacts there. But they hadn't found everything. There were more storage devices hidden in other parts of the mine. Each one contained pieces of humanity's plan to fight back. The first real test came when they decided to sabotage a crystal shipment. Nothing big, just enough to slow down production and see if they could do it without getting caught. Bora created a small device that would cause the transport vehicles to break down after they left the mine. It worked perfectly. 3 trucks full of crystals broke down in the mountains. The Valori spent 2 days trying to figure out what went wrong. They never suspected sabotage. We did it, Woojin whispered excitedly during their next meeting. We actually hurt them. This is just the beginning, Taeho said. But we have to be smarter than they are. We have to be patient, Hisu nodded. The files say resistance grows slowly. One person tells another they trust. That person finds someone else. Eventually, you have an army that nobody saw coming. As Taeho lay in his small bunk that night, he thought about the 10 people who had died. He couldn't bring them back, but he could make sure their deaths meant something. The Valori thought humans were weak and afraid. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The resistance had begun. In the shadows of the mine, in whispered conversations and secret meetings, humanity was starting to fight back. The white armies had ruled the galaxy for centuries, but they had never faced anything like what was coming. Taeho closed his eyes and dreamed of the day when humans would be free again. It seemed impossible now, but the files they had found proved that someone had believed it could happen. Someone had prepared for this moment. The shadows were learning to strike back. 2 years had passed since the Fourth Fleet's assault began. The resistance had not just survived the Valori crackdown, it had evolved into something completely different. What started as scattered mining crews with improvised weapons had become a military force that operated across dozens of star systems. Captain Hyun-soo stood on the bridge of the captured Valori destroyer Shadow, Strike, watching his mixed crew of humans and alien allies prepare for battle. The ship's white hull had been painted black, and Valori symbols had been replaced with a simple design, a clenched human fist surrounded by stars. "Captain," called Namho from the communication station. "We're receiving signals from the other ships in the fleet." The Shadow Fleet had grown to 37 vessels, all of them captured or stolen from the Valori. Each ship was commanded by humans, but the crews included members of other enslaved species who had joined the rebellion. The insectoid Ket were excellent engineers. The aquatic Mordai were skilled navigators. The crystalline Vextar could interface directly with computer systems. "This is incredible," thought Hyun-soo as he looked at the tactical display. 3 years ago, he had been a transport pilot, moving supplies between mining stations. Now he commanded a fleet that made the Valori Navy nervous. The transformation had begun when Dr. So Young made her breakthrough discovery. While hiding from Valori patrols in the ruins of an old research station, she found that human brain patterns could control Valori technology in unexpected ways. The aliens had designed their systems to be operated by logical, predictable thought processes. Human creativity and intuition confused the computers, but also gave humans access to functions the Valori had never intended. "We don't just steal their ships, Mo," So Young had explained to the resistance leadership. "We make them better. We combine human thinking with Valori technology to create something neither species could build alone. The hybrid technology had given the Resistance its first real military advantage. Human-modified Valori weapons were more accurate and more powerful. Human-operated Valori ships were faster and more maneuverable. Most importantly, human intuition could find weaknesses in Valori systems that logical analysis missed. But the real turning point came when the Resistance made contact with other enslaved species. For thousands of years, the Ket, Mordai, and Vextar had served the Valori Empire without hope of freedom. They had never imagined that rebellion was possible until they saw humans fighting back. Unji, a young human pilot who had become famous throughout the galaxy for her daring raids, had made the first contact with the Ket. During a mission to steal medical supplies, her ship was damaged and crashed on a planet where Ket workers were building Valori installations. Instead of turning her in, the Ket workers helped repair her ship. In return, Yunji shared the Resistance communication codes and tactical information. Within weeks, the first Ket resistance cells were forming. The humans showed us something we had forgotten, explained Ket leader Zektar during a joint planning session, that masters can be defeated by slaves if the slaves are willing to fight smart instead of fighting angry. The alliance grew quickly. Each species contributed unique abilities to the rebellion. The Mordai could survive in environments that would kill humans or Ket. The Vextar could process information faster than any computer. The Ket could build almost anything from basic materials. Together, they launched Operation Dark Dawn, the largest coordinated attack in the rebellion's history. 47 resistance groups struck Valori installations simultaneously across 17 star systems. They destroyed military bases, liberated slave camps, and captured enough weapons and ships to double the size of the resistance fleet. The operation's success shocked both the rebels and the Valori. In a single day, the Resistance had transformed from a terrorist organization into a legitimate military threat. Admiral Velthera's reports to the Valori High Command became increasingly desperate. The human rebellion has evolved beyond our containment capabilities, she wrote. They now possess significant space assets and have formed alliances with other enslaved populations. Conventional military responses are proving inadequate. But the Resistance was learning that military success brought new challenges. Managing a fleet required different skills than sabotaging mining equipment. Coordinating attacks across multiple star systems was more complex than planning local operations. Taeho, now known throughout the galaxy as General Quan Ho, struggled with the transition from resistance fighter to military commander. Leading a small team of trusted friends was very different from commanding thousands of soldiers from different species. Sometimes, I miss the old days, he confided to Bora during a quiet moment between battles, when it was just us in the mining tunnels planning small sabotage operations. I know, Bora replied. But look what we've accomplished. Look how many people are free because of what we started. The liberation of slave camps had indeed been one of the Resistance's greatest achievements. Hundreds of thousands of humans and aliens had been freed from Valori labor camps. They formed the backbone of the rebellion's civilian infrastructure, providing supplies, intelligence, and new recruits. But freedom brought responsibility. The liberated populations needed food, shelter, medical care, and protection. The Resistance had to become more than just a military force, it had to become a government. We're fighting two wars now, explained Namho during a leadership meeting. The military war against Valori forces and the political war to build something better than what we're replacing. The political war was sometimes harder than the military one. Different species had different ideas about how a free galaxy should be organized. Some wanted revenge against their former masters. Others preferred peaceful coexistence. Some wanted strong central government. Others preferred local autonomy. The breakthrough came when young Mai, a resistance pilot, proposed a simple solution during a heated debate between species representatives. We're all fighting for the same thing, she said, freedom to make our own choices. So let's build a system that protects that freedom for everyone, regardless of species. The idea became the foundation for the Galactic Democratic Coalition, a loose alliance that allowed each member world to govern itself while cooperating on defense and trade. It wasn't perfect, but it was something all the species could support. Meanwhile, the military war was escalating rapidly. The Valori had committed their entire strategic reserve to crushing the rebellion. Nearly half their total fleet was now engaged in anti-resistance operations, leaving their outer territories vulnerable to other threats. The Resistance took advantage of this by launching simultaneous attacks on dozens of lightly defended worlds. They couldn't hold territory against Valori counterattacks, but they could liberate populations and capture resources. Each successful raid weakened the Valori Empire and strengthened the coalition. The most daring operation was the assault on Primtal, the Valori military academy world. General Quan Ho personally led the attack, commanding a force of 200 ships and 50,000 ground troops from 6 different species. "This is more than just a military target," he explained to his commanders before the battle. "Primtal is where they train the officers who enforce slavery throughout the galaxy. If we can capture it, we send a message that nowhere is safe from the coalition." The battle for Primtal lasted 3 days and became legendary throughout the galaxy. Valori defenders fought desperately to protect their most prestigious military installation. Coalition forces used every tactic they had, learned during years of resistance fighting. The turning point came when Unji led a squadron of captured Valori fighters in a surprise attack on the planet's orbital defense platforms, flying ships designed by their enemies, using tactics that no Valori pilot would attempt. She cleared the way for the main assault force. When coalition troops finally planted their flag on Primtal's central parade ground, the symbolic victory was worth more than the military gain. Across the galaxy, enslaved populations saw images of humans and aliens standing together where Valori officers had once trained to oppress them. "We're not hiding in the shadows anymore," General Quan Ho announced in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "We're standing in the light and we're not afraid." But the coalition's growing success came with a terrible cost. The Valori, faced with the collapse of their empire, became increasingly desperate and brutal. They began targeting civilian populations, destroying entire worlds rather than allowing them to join the rebellion. Young Mai was killed during a rescue mission to evacuate refugees from a doomed world. Her ship was destroyed while she was loading the last group of children onto transport vessels. Her sacrifice saved 2,000 lives, but her death was a devastating blow to coalition morale. "She died so others could live free," General Quan Ho said at her memorial service, attended by representatives from every species in the coalition. "That's what this war is about. Not conquest or revenge, but the simple right to exist without masters." As the 4th year of the war began, both sides were exhausted, but neither was willing to surrender. The Valori Empire was crumbling, but it still controlled hundreds of worlds and commanded millions of troops. Admiral Velthera stood on the bridge of her command ship, looking at reports that made no sense. 17 mining stations had experienced accidents in the past week. Transport ships were disappearing. Communication towers were failing across 12 star systems. "How many humans are involved in these incidents?" she asked her intelligence officer. "Unknown, Admiral. We haven't found any evidence of organized resistance. Each incident appears to be isolated equipment failure or human error." But Velthara had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. She knew the difference between coincidence and enemy action. The humans were fighting back, and they were doing it in ways the Valori military couldn't understand. "Deploy the 4th White Fleet," she ordered. "I want every suspected world under direct military control. If there is a human rebellion, we will crush it completely." On Station Keth 9, Teho received the warning from Sujin just hours before the white ships appeared in orbit. The largest Valori military force ever assembled was coming to destroy the resistance. "How many ships?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Over 200, Sujin replied, her face pale. "Battlecruisers, assault carriers, and troop transports. They're not taking any chances." The resistance leaders held an emergency meeting in the deepest tunnels. Everyone knew this moment would come eventually. The Valori couldn't allow the rebellion to continue growing. "We have to scatter," Hayasu said immediately. "Abandon the fixed bases, destroy all equipment, disappear into the general population." "What about the other groups?" Bora asked. "They'll face the same assault. We warn everyone we can," Teho decided. "Then we go underground completely." The old Earth files talked about this phase. When the enemy brings overwhelming force, you become invisible. But going invisible was harder than they expected. Commander Crescion, the Valori officer leading the ground assault, was different from other white soldiers. He was smart, patient, and completely ruthless. Crescion didn't just increase security. He changed how the entire station operated. Humans were moved to different work areas every day so they couldn't plan together. All communication devices were replaced with monitored versions. Guards were posted in places where humans gathered. Worse, Crescion started using psychological warfare. He announced that any human caught in restricted areas would be executed immediately. Not just the individual, but their work team, their friends, anyone they had been seen talking to recently. The new rules created fear and suspicion among the human workers. People stopped making eye contact with each other. Conversations became short and careful. The sense of unity that had built the resistance began to crumble. 3 weeks into the occupation, disaster struck. Jaewon, one of their most trusted fighters, was caught carrying a modified mining laser. Under interrogation, he revealed the location of a weapons cache. "They have Jaewon," Woo Jin reported during a desperate meeting in an abandoned air vent. "And they found the cache in Sector 7. Taeho felt sick. Jaewon knew too much. He could identify other resistance members, reveal meeting places, expose the entire network on Station Keth 9. "We have to assume he'll talk," Haisu said grimly. "Valori interrogation methods are very effective. They had planned for this possibility. Emergency protocols required all exposed members to disappear immediately. Safe houses were abandoned. Weapons were hidden in new locations. Communication networks were shut down, but Crescion was too smart to simply wait for information from one prisoner. He began systematic searches of the entire station. Every tunnel was explored. Every storage room was emptied. Every piece of equipment was examined. The resistance watched helplessly as months of careful preparation were destroyed. Hidden weapons were discovered and confiscated. Secret meeting places were found and sealed. Suspected resistance members were arrested and taken away. Mi Young made a desperate decision. She volunteered to get captured on purpose, pretending to be a resistance member so she could get close to the Valori command structure. It was incredibly dangerous, but someone needed to find out what they were planning. "I can do this," she insisted when the others protested. "I know how to act scared and broken. They'll think I'm just another frightened human." Mi Young's plan worked, but the cost was terrible to watch. She allowed herself to be caught with a crude weapon, then broke down crying during interrogation. She begged for mercy and offered to help the Valori find other resistance members. Crescion believed her performance. He used Mi Young as an informant, giving her access to Valori communications and planning meetings. But everything she learned came at the price of watching other humans suffer. The information Mi Young gathered was devastating. The Fourth White Fleet wasn't just attacking Station Keth 9. Similar operations were happening on 43 different worlds simultaneously. The Valori were trying to destroy the entire resistance network at once. Even worse, they were succeeding. Resistance groups that had taken months to build were being crushed in days. Leaders were captured or killed. Weapons were confiscated. Communication networks were shut down. "Half the groups have gone silent," Sujin reported during one of their few remaining meetings. "Either they're completely underground or they've been destroyed." But the resistance was learning from its defeats. The groups that survived were the ones that adapted fastest to the new conditions. They abandoned everything the Valori expected and became something entirely different. Instead of fixed cells with regular members, they formed temporary partnerships that dissolved after each operation. Instead of storing weapons and supplies, they learned to make everything from common materials moments before using it. Instead of planned attacks, they used purely random strikes that couldn't be predicted or prevented. Taeho's group pioneered the new approach. They stopped meeting as a team and instead worked as individuals who occasionally cooperated on specific targets. Bora would sabotage a power relay. Donghyuk would damage a transport vehicle. Yuna would contaminate a supply shipment. Each action looked unrelated to the others. The new strategy was working, but it was also lonely and dangerous. Without regular contact with other resistance members, each person had to make decisions alone. Mistakes could be fatal, and there was no backup if something went wrong. The worst moment came when they learned that Jaewon had died during interrogation. Crescion had pushed too hard, trying to extract information that Jaewon didn't actually have. Their friend had died protecting secrets he didn't even know. He held out as long as he could, Mi Young reported through their emergency communication system. But they broke him before they killed him. Some names were revealed. That meant more arrests were coming. The resistance members whose names Jaewon had given would be hunted down systematically. They had to be warned, but any attempt to contact them might expose others. Hayasu made the hard choice. She sent a single coded message through the public communication system, a message that looked like routine work scheduling but actually meant run and hide immediately. Anyone who understood the code would disappear. Anyone who didn't understand it was probably safe. The message saved some lives, but not all. Over the next week, 7 more resistance members were arrested. 3 were executed publicly as examples. The others were taken to the Valori command ship for interrogation. "We're losing this fight," Dong-hyuk said during a brief meeting in a supply closet. "They're too strong, too organized, too ruthless." But Taeho wasn't ready to give up. The old Earth files had warned that this phase would be the hardest. When a resistance movement faced overwhelming force, most people would quit. Only the truly dedicated would continue fighting. "Maybe we're losing this battle," he said quietly. "But look what we've already accomplished. 3 months ago, humans were afraid to even look at a Valori wrong. Now they're so scared of us that they brought 200 warships to stop us." "He's right," Bora added. "We changed things. We proved that humans can fight back. Even if they crush us here, the idea will spread to other worlds." And the idea was spreading. Despite the military crackdown, resistance activity was increasing on planets that hadn't been hit by the Fourth Fleet. New groups were forming faster than old ones were being destroyed. The Valori were winning battles but losing the larger war. Mi Young's intelligence reports confirmed this. Chrysion was requesting more troops and resources, but Valori military command was refusing. They couldn't spare additional forces for occupation duty when resistance activity was erupting across the entire galaxy. "They're spread too thin," Mi Young explained during a secret meeting. "Every time they crush one group, 2 new ones appear somewhere else. They don't have enough ships to occupy every human world simultaneously." The resistance was learning to use the Valori's own tactics against them. When the white armies concentrated their forces to attack one area, the humans struck everywhere else. When they spread their forces thin to cover more territory, the humans hit them with coordinated attacks they couldn't defend against. Most importantly, the resistance was learning to survive. The groups that remained active after the military crackdown were harder, smarter, and more dangerous than before. They had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. "We're not the same people who started this rebellion," Taeho realized. "We're not miners and workers anymore. We're soldiers." The discovery came from an unexpected source. Jin Woo, a former mining surveyor who had become the Coalition's chief intelligence officer, found the location of Valoria Prime, hidden in captured Valori navigation data. For 3,000 years, the location of the Valori homeworld had been the most closely guarded secret in the galaxy. "It's here," Jin Woo announced to the Coalition's War Council, pointing to a star system that appeared empty on all public maps. Valoria Prime, the heart of their empire. General Quan Ho studied the data carefully. The homeworld was protected by the entire First White Fleet, over 600 ships including their most advanced battleships. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metal shell. It was the strongest fortress in the galaxy. "Can we win?" asked Dr. So Young, who had become the Coalition's chief technology officer. "Not in a direct assault," Quan Ho admitted. "But we don't need to win a traditional battle. We just need to prove that their capital isn't safe. If we can reach Valoria Prime, every world in their empire will know the war is over." The plan that emerged was impossibly complex. The Coalition would launch simultaneous attacks on 12 key Valori worlds, forcing them to divide their forces to defend multiple targets. While the Valori fleet was scattered, a small strike force would punch through to the homeworld. It was the largest military operation in galactic history. Over 2,000 ships and 3 million troops from dozens of species would participate. The logistics alone required months of preparation. But Emperor Thalaron, the supreme ruler of the Valori Empire, had no intention of negotiating. From his crystal palace on Valoria Prime, he issued a final declaration to the galaxy. "The Valori are the perfect species," his message proclaimed. "We will not be ruled by inferior beings. The rebellion will be crushed completely, and order will be restored to the galaxy." The Emperor's refusal to consider peace meant the war would end only when one side was completely defeated. There would be no negotiated settlement, no compromise solution. The Coalition would either win total victory or face total destruction. The final battle began at dawn on a Tuesday Galactic Standard Time. Across 12 star systems, Coalition forces struck at Valori military installations. The diversionary attacks were led by veteran commanders who had learned their skills in the mining tunnels of Keth 9. Bora commanded the assault on the fortress world of Kelthan, using modified mining explosives to breach walls that had stood for centuries. Dong Hyuk led a ground assault on the weapons manufacturing planet of Vortai, where his knowledge of industrial equipment helped Coalition forces capture intact factories. The diversions worked perfectly. Valerie commanders, trained to respond to threats with overwhelming force, sent ships from the First Fleet to reinforce the attacked worlds. Within hours, the defenses around Valoria Prime were reduced by nearly half. General Quan Ho led the strike force through the gap in the Valori defenses. 300 ships, including the best vessels in the Coalition fleet, raced toward the homeworld before the enemy could respond. But the Valori weren't helpless. Admiral Velthara, commanding from her flagship Perfect Light, had anticipated this moment. She had kept the strongest ships in reserve, ready to defend the capital when the final attack came. The space battle above Valoria Prime lasted 18 hours and involved over 1,000 ships. Coalition forces fought with desperate courage, knowing this was their only chance to end the war. Valori defenders fought with fanatic determination, believing their entire civilization was at stake. The battle's turning point came when Young Mi's protege, a pilot named Han Sol, volunteered for a suicide mission. Flying a ship loaded with explosive charges, he crashed into the primary orbital defense platform, creating a gap in the defensive shell. "This is for Young Mi," Han Sol transmitted as his ship dove toward the platform, "and for everyone who died for freedom." The explosion disabled the defense grid and allowed Coalition ground forces to reach the planet's surface. But even with orbital support, the assault on Valoria Prime was incredibly difficult. The planet's defenders included the elite White Guard, the most skilled soldiers in the Valori military. The fighting in the capital city was fierce and brutal. Coalition troops, led by veterans like Hisu and Sujin, had to fight through streets designed as death traps for invaders. Every building was a fortress. Every intersection was covered by defensive positions. But the Coalition had advantages the Valori hadn't expected. Human creativity found solutions to problems that had stopped previous attackers. Ket engineering skills created new weapons from captured equipment. Mordai amphibious capabilities allowed attacks from unexpected directions. Most importantly, the Coalition forces were fighting for freedom while the Valori were fighting to preserve slavery. That difference in motivation showed in every battle, every sacrifice, every moment of courage under fire. The final assault on the Imperial Palace lasted 3 days. Emperor Thaleron, surrounded by his personal guard, refused all surrender offers. He preferred to see his empire destroyed rather than admit that inferior species could defeat the Valori. "We are perfect," he screamed at the Coalition negotiators. "We cannot be defeated by slaves and animals." But perfection, it turned out, was a weakness. The Valori had become so convinced of their superiority that they couldn't adapt when their assumptions proved wrong. They kept using the same tactics even when those tactics were clearly failing. The Coalition forces, trained in the chaos of guerrilla warfare, adapted constantly. When one approach didn't work, they tried another. When the enemy changed their defenses, the Coalition changed their attacks. Flexibility defeated rigidity. General Quan Ho himself led the final assault on the palace throne room. The man who had started as a mining supervisor now stood before the emperor of the galaxy's most powerful empire. "It's over," Quan Ho said simply. "Your ships are defeated, your capital is captured, your empire is collapsing. Surrender now and we can discuss terms." Emperor Thaleron looked at the mixed group of humans and aliens surrounding him. To the end, he couldn't understand how beings he considered inferior had defeated his perfect civilization. "I will not surrender to slaves," he said. Reaching for a concealed weapon, the emperor died fighting, still refusing to accept that his empire had fallen. With his death, organized Valori resistance collapsed. Across the galaxy, white ships began surrendering to Coalition forces. But General Quan Ho and the Coalition leadership faced a crucial decision. They had won the war, but what should they do with victory? Many species wanted revenge against their former masters. The Valori had enslaved billions and destroyed countless worlds. The debate raged for days in the newly captured palace. Some argued for executing all Valori leaders and dismantling their civilization completely. Others wanted to enslave the Valori as they had enslaved others. A few suggested dividing up the former empire among the victorious species. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mi-young, the former double agent who had survived years of dangerous espionage, made a simple proposal. "We didn't fight this war to become the new oppressors," she said. "We fought for freedom. That means freedom for everyone, even our former enemies." The Galactic Democratic Coalition that emerged from the war's end was based on principles of equality and self-determination. Former Valori worlds were invited to join as equal members. War criminals were tried and punished, but ordinary Valori citizens were offered the chance to rebuild their society. Many Valori struggled to accept their new status. For millennia, they had believed themselves to be the galaxy's natural rulers. Learning to live as equals with other species was difficult and sometimes painful. But some Valori embraced the change. They had grown tired of the Empire's endless wars and brutal oppression. Working alongside former slaves to build a better galaxy gave their lives new meaning. Dr. So-young established the Galactic Technology Institute, where scientists from all species worked together to develop new innovations. The hybrid human-Valori technology that had won the war became the foundation for peaceful advances in medicine, transportation, and communication. Taeho, now known throughout the galaxy as the Liberator, served as the Coalition's first elected president. But he never forgot his origins in the mining tunnels of Keth-9. His office was decorated with simple tools that reminded him of where the rebellion had started. "We were shadows once," he said in his inaugural address to the Galactic Assembly. "Hidden in darkness, afraid to hope for freedom. But shadows exist because there is light somewhere. We found that light within ourselves, and now we share it with the galaxy." The transformation wasn't instant or easy. Building a democratic society from the ruins of an empire took generations. There were setbacks, conflicts, and moments when the old ways seemed easier than the new ones. But the fundamental change was irreversible. The idea that some species were naturally superior to others had been destroyed forever. The concept that freedom was worth any sacrifice had taken root throughout the galaxy. Years later, historians would mark the discovery of the hidden weapons cache on Keth-9 as the moment when the modern galaxy was born. A small group of humans, working with simple tools and underground tunnels, had lit a spark that grew into a fire that transformed the stars.